Lansing, North Carolina, population 100 or under. This is the Lansing Presbyterian Church where I preached when I was in seminary and went to as I was older childhood. My father's middle name is Lansing, Robert Lansing Stamper, and as we moved next door, this grocery store that at that time was C&S Grocery, and it stood for Campbell, an elder in the church. Peanut Campbell, he's about 5 foot tall. It was called C&S Grocery. C for Campbell. Peanut was the operator and the partner, and S was Stamper. And I lived above in the apartments in the summer when I come and preach. Now you can look down through the main street of Lansing and see the thriving population, a busy community. There's the volunteer fire department on the left, the social center of the town, I might add. Now we're going to go down to the opposite end of town in front of Osborne's grocery store. Now in front of Lansing Auto Parts at the other end of town, right next door is what was Osborne Grocery Store. Now Walter Osborne was an elder in the Lansing Presbyterian Church, like Peanut, ran a general store, a little very small store like the garage here next door. Gary Osborne was my closest friend in the summer when I come up here in my childhood. And when he came 16 years of age, he was the only child. His daddy spoiled him. Gave him a 1959 Chevrolet Coupe, 4 on the floor. I mean, it was quite something. He was very proud of it. And but when it broke down, it didn't break down. It just had a mechanical problem. So Walter decided he would just let the guy next door, that they'd been neighbors in business and in the community for longer than Walter, Gary and I had been alive, he'd let him fix it. Now, before we get into that story, how do you model faith? Well, you model it by living it out. We see Isaac here modeling his faith when he dug wells, which were very valuable in a dry climate. And 2 different times he'd dig a well and the locals would come and claim it and say, no, it's ours, even though he dug it. And he'd go do another one, and then he would give it up and let them have it. I think he called them contention and dispute, words to indicate that. How do you deal, when you model faith, how do you deal with people who are being difficult and who are impossible? How do you live out your faith? Well, Isaac was modeling that to us, to his son Jacob, who would be the father of the 12 tribes of Israel, to his grandson, who would hear about this and was Joseph. Jesus said, if your enemy forces you to go a mile, and the Roman soldiers in those days could enforce a law that said any local had to carry their pack at least a mile. They were required to do that at any time. And we'll wait till that car drives off. The truck, rather. Now, the Romans, by law, as conquerors, could make you carry that pack at any moment, and it was very onerous, aggravating. Jesus said, if somebody forces you to go a mile, you go an extra mile with them. That was a harsh lesson. He said, no, take an extra mile. The way you deal with your enemies is earn their respect. The way you deal with your enemy is make them a friend. Interestingly enough, we see later, after that episode where Isaac said, okay, you can have these wells, that they came to him and said, look, we can see that God is with you, and we want to establish a relationship with you because he's prospering you and protecting you. So he made enemies into friends, into people he earned respect of. Now, Gary was very offended and angry when he took his car next door to this garage, and it didn't get fixed exactly right. And he went to Walter, his daddy, and fussed about it, complained about it. I was with him and talked about what a terrible mechanic the guy was next door. And Walter modeled faith to me, and I still remember it. He said, son, we've been neighbors in business and neighbors in the community, all 100 of us in Lansing, for longer than you've been alive. And it's not worth it to make an issue out of this. I'll take your car uptown, about 15 miles away, and let the dealership up there deal with it. And I remember seeing this, Gary was continuing to fuss about it in front of me, but I remember thinking, by golly, that's the way you live your faith. That's the way you live faith. That's what faith means, and that's how you get along with people for a lifetime. When you live in a community with just 100 of them, it deeply impacted me, and I've always remembered that. So, how do you model faith? You live it.
Christ alone, my hope is found. He is my light, my strength, my song. This cornerstone, this solid ground, firm through the fiercest droughts and storm. What heights of love, what depths of peace, when fears are stilled, when striving cease. My comforter, my all in all, here in the love of Christ I stand. In Christ alone, who took on flesh, fullness of God in helpless babe, this gift of love and righteousness, scorned by the ones he came to save. Till on that cross, as Jesus died, the wrath of God was satisfied. For every sin on him was laid. Here in the death of Christ I live. The ground his body lay, light of the world, my darkness slain, then bursting forth in glorious day, up from the grave he rose again, and as he stands in victory, the curse has lost its grip on me, for I am his, and he is mine, bought with the precious blood of Christ. Guilt in life, no fear in death, this is the power of Christ in me. First cry to final breath, Jesus commands my destiny. No power of hell, no scheme of man can never pluck me from his hand, till he returns or calls me home, here in the power of Christ.